Welcome to Defense Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: Israel promises unrelenting attacks on Hamas, U.S., Obama urge caution. Obama warns some of Israel's actions in Gaza may backfire. China affirms Israel's right to self-defense, shifting stance. Vic Fisher, last surviving delegate to Alaska Constitutional Convention, dies at age 99. Ex-officer sentenced after assaulting man during unrest in Minneapolis after murder of George Floyd. Israel promises unrelenting attacks on Hamas, U.S., Obama urge caution. Yahoo! Israel said it was preparing for unrelenting attacks to dismantle Hamas, while former U.S. President Barack Obama warned that any Israeli military strategy that ignores the human costs could ultimately backfire. The Palestinian Health Ministry said the Gaza death toll in 2 weeks of airstrikes had topped 5,000. Obama warns some of Israel's actions in Gaza may backfire. Reuters. Former U.S. President Barack Obama has criticized Israel's actions in its war against Hamas, warning that cutting off food and water to Gaza could harden Palestinian attitudes for generations and weaken international support for Israel. Obama stated that any military strategy that ignores the human costs of war could ultimately backfire. He condemned Hamas' attack on Israel and reiterated his support for Israel's right to defend itself, but cautioned about the risks to civilians. It is unclear whether Obama coordinated his statement with current U.S. President Joe Biden. China affirms Israel's right to self-defense, shifting stance. Bloomberg. China has acknowledged Israel's right to self-defense against Hamas, marking the first time Beijing has made such a statement. The acknowledgement came after China faced criticism over its stance on the Israel-Hamas conflict. Chinese President Xi Jinping called for an immediate ceasefire and offered to coordinate with Egypt and other Arab nations to find a lasting solution. However, China has refrained from condemning Hamas, which has been designated as a terrorist organization by the US and EU. The acknowledgement by China comes ahead of Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi's high-profile visit to Washington. Vic Fisher, last surviving delegate to Alaska Constitutional Convention, dies at age 99. Associated Press. Vic Fisher, the last surviving delegate to the Alaska Constitutional Convention in the 1950s, has died at the age of 99. Fisher played a key role in drafting the foundational document that took effect when Alaska became a state in 1959. He later served in the state legislature and was involved in Alaska politics throughout his life. Fisher's death was confirmed by a family friend. He is survived by his wife, Jane Angvik, and children. Ex-officer sentenced after assaulting man during unrest in Minneapolis after murder of George Floyd. Associated Press. A former Minneapolis police officer, Justin Stetson, has been sentenced to 15 days in the county workhouse and 2 years of probation for assaulting a black man, Jaleel Stallings, during the unrest that followed the murder of George Floyd in 2020. Stetson pleaded guilty to the assault, admitting that his use of force was unreasonable and went beyond what officers are legally allowed to do. Stallings suffered a fractured eye socket, cuts, and bruises as a result of the assault. Stetson has been ordered to complete an anger management course, pay fines, and refrain from applying for law enforcement jobs for life. China's top diplomat to visit D.C. amid tensions over South China Sea, Israel. Washington Post. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi will visit Washington this week, the State Department said Monday, the highest-level visit by a Chinese official since tensions spiked early this year after a Chinese spy balloon floated across American airspace. The 3 days of meetings, starting Thursday, are the latest sign that Beijing is laying the groundwork for a possible visit by Chinese President Xi Jinping to a summit of Asia-Pacific leaders in San Francisco next month, which would be his first trip to the United States since 2017. China's Wang to visit Washington this week amid Middle East tensions. Bloomberg. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is set to visit Washington this week for high-level meetings with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. The visit comes as the U.S. and China engage in diplomatic efforts to manage tensions between the two countries. The U.S. plans to raise the subject of the ongoing war in the Middle East, which began with the invasion of Israel by Hamas. The U.S. has strongly supported Israel, while China has called for a ceasefire. The U.S. will also discuss Russia's invasion of Ukraine and North Korea's weapons program with Wang. The meeting is part of ongoing efforts to manage U.S.-China relations, but no clear deliverables have been outlined. The Biden administration also plans to bring up China's activities in the South China Sea, particularly around the Second Thomas Shoal. The visit is a delayed result of an invitation issued to then Foreign Minister Qin Gang in June. Park Seo-bo, whose quiet paintings trumpeted Korean art, dies at 91. New York Times. Park Seo-bo, a painter, died in Seoul on October 14 at the age of 91. He was mainly recognized for his monochromes, which he made by moving a pencil or stylus through wet oil paint. The art critic Bong Kentak advised him to call these works écritures, from the French word for writing. Park later adapted the process for Korean mulberry paper, or hanji, which he believed to be more durable. He turned his art practice into a kind of meditation, one that was void, in the Buddhist sense, of both content and form. In this respect, Park was typical of what came to be called the Dansekwa group, a loose retrospective term for artists like Park, Yoon Hyung-kun and others who used minimal colors and process-based work to break with Korea's official artistic establishment of the 1960s and 70s. Iran's Ayatollahs play the Middle East's most dangerous game. Economist. The recent conflict between Israel and Hamas has raised concerns that it could escalate into a wider Middle East conflagration involving other actors in the region. The U.S. has sent a second carrier strike group to the Persian Gulf, and fears are growing that Israel could use America's cover to launch a preemptive strike. Iran's network of violent proxies across the region, known as the Axis of Resistance, is seen as a major factor in the potential escalation. Iran's goal is not to provoke outright war with the West and its allies, but rather to sow uncertainty and instability. It seeks to maintain strategic ambiguity while supplying armed groups with weapons and training, using them to conduct attacks and complicate the West's calculations. The current crisis has halted talks on normalizing relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia, which Iran opposes. However, the escalating proxy war with the U.S. and its allies carries significant risks for Iran, including the potential for a new cycle of protests at home. Iran's shadow war is a delicate game, and it is unclear if it can control its proxies or if they can balance their military aspirations with the interests of their host countries. U.S.-China tensions are top geopolitical risk, BlackRock says. Bloomberg. BlackRock has identified the strategic competition between the U.S. and China as the top geopolitical risk facing global markets. Tensions between the two countries were given a high-risk rating in BlackRock's October geopolitical risk dashboard, with an attention score of 1.5, almost double that of a possible major terrorist attack. The report warned that the recent thaw in U.S.-China relations is fragile and flagged China's actions in the South China Sea and its willingness to pressure Taiwan. The report also noted that the U.S. is providing increased military and economic support to Taiwan. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the 6 Degrees world. Today, we have a mix of news stories ranging from international conflicts to the arts. Let's dive in. In the Middle East, Israel has promised unrelenting attacks on Hamas, while former U.S. President Barack Obama has warned of potential backfire if the human costs of war are ignored. It's a delicate situation, and the U.S. is urging caution. Surprisingly, China has acknowledged Israel's right to self-defense, marking a shift in their stance. Chinese President Xi Jinping has called for a ceasefire and offered to coordinate efforts for a lasting solution. Moving on to domestic news, we mourn the loss of Vic Fisher, the last surviving delegate to the Alaska Constitutional Convention. Fisher played a vital role in shaping the state's foundational document. In Minneapolis, a former police officer has been sentenced for assaulting a black man during the unrest that followed the murder of George Floyd. Justice is being served, but there is still a long way to go. In international diplomacy, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is set to visit Washington, D.C. this week. The visit comes at a time of tensions over the South China Sea and the Israel-Hamas conflict. The U.S. plans to discuss these issues and more, including Russia's invasion of Ukraine and North Korea's weapons program. Let's hope these discussions bring about positive change. On the art scene, we bid farewell to Park Seo-bo, a renowned painter known for his monochromatic works. His art was a form of meditation, void of content and form, and he was part of the Dansekwa group that challenged Korea's artistic establishment. Lastly, we turn our attention to Iran's shadow war in the Middle East. The recent conflict between Israel and Hamas has raised concerns of a wider conflagration involving Iran's network of proxies. Iran seeks to maintain strategic ambiguity and sow uncertainty, but the risks are high. The current crisis has halted talks on normalizing relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia, and there is potential for protests and instability within Iran itself. In the world of finance, BlackRock has identified the U.S.-China strategic competition as the top geopolitical risk facing global markets. Tensions between the two countries remain high, especially regarding China's actions in the South China Sea and its pressure on Taiwan. And there you have it, a snapshot of the news from around the world. Now, it's time for your thoughts. What do you make of these stories? Do you have any questions or opinions? The floor is yours, so let's hear what you have to say. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.